Hello YouTube, I'm Andrew Does Hair. You can find my work on Instagram at Andrew Does Hair. If you go look around at general photography circles, you'll find that something that kind of splits up the room is photo editing. Some people believe that editing is a part of the process and a part of your artistic creation as a photographer. But other people believe that photo editing is cheating. It's a way of concealing that you suck at being a photographer. Now, more specifically, if you were to look at like the hair scene, hairdressers and barbers on Instagram, photo editing, I would say, is even more a hot topic. People are even more angry about it, and more people agree that it's messed up to do. But in the hair scene, it's not necessarily like, hey, you edited the photo to hide what a bad photographer you are. It's, hey, you edited a photo to conceal how bad you are at hair. There's this whole heated emotional debate that photo editing in the hair scene, if you're a barber, if you're a hairstylist, editing your fade, editing your hair color is like an immoral act. It's a wrong thing to do. Something that I want to do today with this video is just kind of talk about this. Just share thoughts on it and point out in a few scenarios, common scenarios that you would see barbers and hairstylists editing their photos. Just kind of show what is really going on with it. And it's my hope that whether you're a barber, a hairstylist, or even just a consumer who is looking at hair content to find your next barber or hairstylist, that we would have a better understanding of what's happening if we do see a photo that we believe is edited. And I'm not trying to say specifically that it's right or it's wrong. I do edit my photos, but the general name of the game, the overarching theme that we're going to kind of touch over and over with this video is intention. There's editing your photo to make it look more like what you saw in real life. There's editing your photo to make your client feel better about what they look like in the photo. And then there's editing a photo to hide that you don't know how to cut hair very well. And they're all completely different intentions, but you can go about them more or less the same way. So it's one of those things where when I see people say editing hair photos is immoral, I'm like, well, depends why you're editing it. What is the outcome you're aiming for? What are you doing the editing for? The first really big, important thing that I want to touch here is when somebody posts a photo that they claim is unedited, it doesn't mean that the photo is as close to reality as you can get. I think that's this big misconception that we have, that if you just take a photo and you post it and you didn't do any kind of editing or filtering, that's just so close to reality. And the only way to make it not reality is to edit it. But here's the thing. The color of the light is going to drastically change the way that the camera perceives what it's taking a photo of. The shape and the size of the light and the brightness of the light is going to drastically change how the camera perceives what it's taking a photo of. The lens itself is going to drastically change proportions and things that you're taking a photo of. The size of your sensor matters. The distance that you're shooting your subject from matters. You can actually make a nose bigger by shooting closer to them and make a nose smaller by standing further away from them. And the same goes for any part of a hairstyle. If you were to shoot a pompadour very, very close, it can look massive. If you stand across the room and shoot it, it won't look massive. It'll look a little bit more naturally proportioned. So that even the distance standing from your model or your client can change the way that they look. Every single digital camera ever is going to treat colors and tones differently from the next one. There's no universal standard of if you don't edit it, it's just perfectly accurate colors. Every time you take a photo with a digital camera, it's putting its own flavor and spin on what happened there, which is not reality. It's the camera's perception of reality. If you're shooting with a smartphone, especially a newer one, what it's doing is something called computational photography, and look that up if you're curious, but essentially your phone is actually editing every photo you take for you, and you might not even know it, but it'll blow your mind. Just watch videos about computational photography and find out what like the iPhone 13 is actually doing to your photos, and you will never look at an unedited photo and think it's reality again. And then every different screen that the viewer is looking at is going to have a different spin on the colors and the tones and things in your photo. It's not like we all have the exact same phone and the photo is going to look exactly the same to all of us. So even if you never touch an editing slider anywhere along the way, your phone is not shooting reality. Let me give you a quick example of that. I'm going to take my phone here. I'm going to shoot 3 quick photos of the same head, and I want you to tell me which one is reality. 2, 3. So we've got three very, very different looking photos there. I didn't touch an editing slider. I didn't do anything. I moved the camera back, I swapped lenses, and I haven't edited anything. But are they the same photo? They're very far from the same photo. So to say that because they're unedited, they're reality, what about them is similar? Very little, you know? It's the same head, it's the same haircut, and it looks very, very, very different. So again, my first point is an unedited photo does not mean this is the reality. You can trust this. However, I think putting that out there and claiming like, hey, I only post unedited photos, you know, don't blame me for trying to deceive anybody. I think that last little line that I said, deceive anybody, it's, as I said a minute ago, that's the reason that we sometimes feel compelled to say, by the way, it's unedited. And I think some people look at this unedited, unfiltered thing and they think, okay, I'm looking at something that's very close to reality. It's not necessarily any closer or further from reality than anything that you edit, but it is sort of a promise that I didn't try to tamper with this. I didn't do anything to alter it. I let the camera alter it, I let the lens alter it, I let the lighting in the room alter it, I let all these other things alter it, but I didn't do any altering. So that's really what it means when somebody posts an unedited photo. It doesn't mean that it's closer to reality. Most barbers, most hairstylists, and most consumers that I talk to about this tend to agree that it's not wrong or immoral to remove blemishes from the skin or to tweak things in the background. But as soon as you touch the hair, do anything to the hair, that's where the line is that becomes immoral. I want to kind of talk about and explore two big fat sins that we see in the hair industry regarding photo editing. The first one is editing a fade. Now, what makes a fade look really attention-grabbing and appealing is when you have kind of a bold but smooth gradation from light hair to dark hair without a lot of deviations along the way. Like it's smoothly light to dark all the way from the top to the bottom. Now, I have a video specifically about how to shoot a fade and how to do what I'm about to explain here, but the difference in your light in the room can drastically change the way that the fade looks. If you have a small little light, it's going to be putting hard shadows all over that fade. And in the camera, even if you're not editing it, even if you are editing it, the hair sticking off of the head in the fade will be casting shadows, and those shadows to the camera can just look like hairs that were missed or not cut or not smooth. And so by having different light, your fade can look better. So in this little example on the screen here, what I'm doing is I'm going to shoot a fade with no added lights. I do have a light in the frame just to show where the light will be in a second, but that light is off at this point. And I'm just shooting with like the house lights on. And in that photo, you can see we don't have that bold, bright gradation. But as soon as I turn on this second little light here, I have it over here. This is a Yongnuo YN360. I have a video all about these lights and why I love them for the salon and barbershop. If I add that little bit of light as a fill light, I get that bold, bright part on the fade, and there's no shadows moving up the fade, and all I can see is hair, and not hair and shadows. Now, if I were to take the first fade photo and go edit it and try to make it look better and do the horrible abomination of a sin, all I'm doing is grabbing the area on the head that later had a light on it and brightening it as though there was an extra light on it. And the end result doesn't look very dissimilar from just adding a light. And so in this case, you know, if somebody's going in and lightening up the bottom of their fade, is that wrong to do it after you take the photo versus by putting a light there before you take the photo? Now, I know some barbers who would say adding the light is wrong because clients don't walk around with a light under their head, and so it never actually will look like it looked in the photo. But the point I'm trying to make here is what we're doing to edit the fade that's wrong to so many people will give us the exact same outcome as simply adding a light, which is not as wrong to not as many people, but the outcome's the same. Now, we could stretch this whole editing a fade thing to its furthest conclusion and figure out where it does become immoral. If you're going in there and erasing hairs that you forgot to cut and really literally removing hair and adding hair where it was or wasn't, now you're trying to be deceitful. And again, it goes back to what I said. The ultimate sin is to try to deceive your customers about the kind of haircuts you can do. Lightening a fade because you didn't have a light on hand to lighten it in person in the moment, I don't know if that's wrong. You get the exact same result by just adding a light. What do you think? Wrong? Another big horrible sin that we hear about and see people accused of when it comes to hair photo editing is evening out or toning blonde. or desaturating a blonde, trying to get something that was almost platinum to look like beyond belief platinum. And obviously, if you're doing this to the extent that it's literally not what happened there, and it's for the purpose of deceiving your customers about what you can do with a bleach and a brush, then it's wrong. But just about every hairdresser I've ever talked to about photography has the same complaint. They say, my salon is yellow. Now in this room, I actually have lights that can change colors, and I have a whole video about that and why I recommend those for salons. And so what I did in this demo that we see here on the screen is I made the room yellow as it is right now. I took a photo of the hair. And then I went back to my white lights. And I took another photo of the hair. So following this, I went into an editing program, Adobe Lightroom, and I changed the white balance to try to make the yellow photo match the white photo. And in the end, the results were very, very similar. If you're editing a photo to correct the white balance, to make the less than ideal yellow lights you have in your salon look like they were white lights, is that wrong? If the end result is basically the same as if you would have taken them into a room full of white light, how is that wrong? You're actually making the photo closer to reality. Like you're taking out the influence of the light bulbs in there. As long as you're doing it to try to show, hey, this is what actually happened, and you're not doing it to deceive, you're not going in and, you know, if you shoot a blonde and you go in and you start brushing over the hair and then you pull back the saturation and then you do all kinds of like localized tone changes and stuff, and you're deliberately trying to make the hair look like a different color than it actually was, maybe that's wrong. But I think using an app or a program like Adobe Lightroom to just correct the color of your light, that's not wrong. And by the way, I actually have a video about that, about how to shoot an accurate blonde. And so you can actually do it all in camera and not have to do any editing at all, but end up having accurate hair color. So to wrap up, I hope I kind of made this clear. Maybe you hopefully picked it up along the way. Photo editing doesn't automatically mean you're trying to deceive somebody about what happened there. It can mean that, and when it does mean that, that's wrong. But oftentimes, photo editing is just a way to fix what you couldn't shoot correctly in the first place because you didn't have the proper lighting or you didn't have the proper setup to shoot. So when you see somebody who you can tell their fade is a little bit really glowy here, you really don't know if they put a light there or if they edited it later. And you can't know, really, honestly. And so, you know, if you get a feeling you're looking at something that's edited, like, don't assume their intentions. But if you know somebody has poor intentions, if they're out there lying to the world, then make sure you tell everybody and go leave some mean comments on their Instagrams. No, I'm kidding, don't do that. I don't know, maybe, I don't care what you do. But this was just a fun thing for me to talk about because I've been seeing this for years now on Instagram. Anytime you see somebody who's bigger than you and you believe shouldn't be, you go, oh, well, they just edit their photos anyways. It's not even fair. It's like, okay, here's what editing can do. Here's how you can do it. Now it's a level playing field. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. And send this video to anybody. Anytime you hear somebody say like, oh, well, they just edit their photos, just send them a link to this video. Like, you know, do me a favor. Thanks.